dugsiga boardingka iyo maalinlaha ah ee Amano Boarding and Day School.
How are you, grade 8? Welcome to our lesson, our social lesson today. I will take you through what we discussed in our last lesson regarding the United Nations Organization. And here on our screen here, we shall look at some of the questions that will actually help us to recall the previous lesson. Now, among the questions that I have here, the three, number one says, the year in which the United Nations was formed. I think in our previous lesson we talked about the year, which was in October 1945. And number two, the main aims of the United Nations. If you can recall, we said that the aims are also known as the objectives or the reasons that led to the formation of the United Nations, which are actually to keep peace and stability and also to protect the rights of all the nations, or the rights of all the people in all the nations. We also looked at the 6 major organs of the United Nations Organization. Remember, when I use the word UNO, it actually means the United Nations Organization here. Then we said that the 6 organs, the major organs of the United Nations Organization, the first one was the General Assembly, followed by the Security Council, the Secretariat, among others. Number 4, we also had the International Court of Justice. We also had the Trusteeship Council and the Social and Economic Council. There were 6 organs. Moving forward, we shall look at the General Assembly, what it is, how many members make the General Assembly, and the function or the functions of the General Assembly. Now here, the General Assembly is the topmost organ of the United Nations Organization. It is the highest organ, and it discusses decisions about international problems like crisis, like even right now we have a pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic. So such problems are normally discussed by the General Assembly. They also elect the Security Council members, and they also supervise the work of many UN bodies. Now, the General Assembly, we said last time in our previous lesson that the headquarters of the United Nations is in New York. So they normally have a sitting, they normally have a meeting once every year. Normally, out of the 195 countries in the whole world, they normally have to take a representative, usually the head of state or maybe a minister of foreign affairs or anybody who can represent each country. Then they sit and discuss. They sit and elect members of the Security Council. They sit and do some other work. Here with us, we shall also be looking at some of pictures showing the General Assembly. And as you can see here on our screen, the flags here representing, each flag represents each country. So out of all the countries that are member states of the United Nations Organization, we have their flags being represented where or wherever there is a meeting going on. Similarly, here, the conference, normally whenever they sit, that meeting, we actually talked about a conference, a large meeting with a specific objective. Look at that. The images, even though not very clear, but they actually show in a conference room, a conference hall, where the General Assembly normally holds their meeting. The General Assembly has its meeting taking place in such an auditorium or in such a conference hall. Second organ, the second organ of the United Nations Organization is the Security Council. And class, when you talk about the Security Council, from the word security, as you can see here, security, right? Here, security. It means that this is actually an organ that is concerned with the security, with the safety of all the member states of the United Nations. Now, they ensure that there is security. The Security Council has 5 permanent member states. Permanent means they are there to stay. They are not replaced. These permanent member states are normally assisted by other 15. Initially they were 10, then they were raised to 15 member states that are non-permanent, meaning that they are usually replaced and elections are done to put in other members. These 5 permanent member states are usually countries that were allied during the World War, First World War and Second World War. The major world powers, right? Including China, we have France. You can guess the next one. Well, your guess is as good as mine. That here we also have other countries like Britain, USA, and Russia. Sometimes they call it the USSR. You know, whenever while it was still called the Soviet Union. Now, these permanent members, there's one thing you must have realized, and what is it? That they all are allied members. Remember, we said that the allied members are actually the ones that came up with the United Nations organization together with other countries. Now, the Permanent Security Council members are also known as the veto power. They have veto power. You know, when talk about veto power, is that they have the constitutional right. They have a right, right? They have a right, and actually they have got that constitutional responsibility to guard, to protect any country that has been attacked, right? Now, here, they have the power to take military decision and even economic decision against any country that without any good reason attacks another country, that without any good reason attacks another member state of the UN. So any country that threatens peace around the world, the United Nations Security Council will have to take an action. It can be a military action by attacking that country, or might be economic action, which means that they might even put sanctions. They might put some restrictions on that country that is attacking the other country. Well, as we move on here, we look at the third one, which is the last, the Secretariat. And we talk about Secretariat from the word secretary. That means that these are people working in the offices. United Nations has actually the Secretariat, which is the third topmost organ, and it's made up of office workers, people who work in their offices. Now, these office workers are not very few. It has more than 50,000, more than 50,000. More than 50,000. Interesting. More than 50,000 employees. Now, it is headed by a Secretary General. So the head of the Secretariat is the Secretary General, who is appointed for a period of 5 years. Right now in the whole world, whenever this crisis, the UN, United Nations Security, United Nations Secretariat, the General Secretary or Secretary General, in that case, will usually come to the press, to the conference, and give a statement. He is the one who guides the normal operations, the working of the United Nations Secretariat. So the present Secretary General of the United Nations is called Antonio Guterres, who is actually from Portugal. Portugal is a country in Europe, we all know that. And that brings us to the end of our lesson today. And just to try and recap, we've looked at the 3 topmost organs of the United Nations, that is the General Assembly. We have also looked at the Security Council and the Secretariat. We have looked at the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, namely the Britain, France, Russia, USA, among others. Now, we also named the 15 member states. We also looked at the 15 other countries that are non-permanent. These ones here, they keep varying, so we have no specific number, we have no specific nations, because they keep varying. Elections are normally done, and 15 member states will represent each state. Whenever elections are done, they'll have to cast their vote. So with that, I would like to thank you for watching and listening.